Hi, everyone. I'm Julie with TranceWithJulie.com. I want to talk today about something I hear constantly at Mediumship and Trance Mediumship. I hear people say, I feel energy coming in. There's a male energy here. If I feel another energy stepping forward. We're all energy. And lately I've been asking myself a question. When did we stop calling spirit spirit? Because when we're talking about a mother, a father, a child, a grandmother, a friend, or a guide, are we really talking about just energy? Are we talking about a conscious individual who still has identity, personality, memory, love, and awareness? That's what I want to explore today. I'm not saying the word energy is wrong. I use it myself sometimes. We all do. But I think we become so used to the word that we don't always stop and think about what we're actually saying. If I say I feel grandmother energy, what do I actually mean? I may be feeling her personality. I may feel the way that she carried herself. I may feel her love. I may become aware of memories. I may sense a relationship to the person I'm reading for. I may hear her words I may hear words from her. So that's really much more than just energy. That's a presence. That's consciousness. That's an individual. And I think sometimes the word energy has become a catch-all word in spiritualism and mediumship. Now let's look at something interesting in the Bible. And I'm not speaking about religion. I believe the Bible has a lot of history and knowledge in it. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul asks a question that I think many of us still ask today. How are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? Notice that he didn't ask, what energy do they become? He asked, with what body do they come? And then he gives the example of a seed. The seed goes into the ground looking like one thing, but what comes from that seed looks completely different. There is still continuity, but there is also transformation. It is sown a natural body is raised a spiritual body, a spiritual body. I think those words are important. It doesn't say we become nothing but energy. It doesn't say we become a ball of consciousness floating around somewhere. It says there's a spiritual body. Now, what exactly that spiritual body is, I don't think any of us can truly know while we're still living in the physical world, but it gives us something to think about. When we come into this physical world, we come to a physical process. It takes a man and a woman to create a physical body. The baby grows inside the mother, the child is born, the body grows, it ages, changes, and eventually the physical body dies. But when we come into the spirit world, there's nothing in the Bible that says we have to begin that process all over again. It doesn't say we're born another spiritual baby. It doesn't describe spiritual pregnancy. It doesn't describe us growing from infancy again. Instead, it describes transformation. Paul says we shall all be changed. That is completely different. That's a completely different idea. We are not starting our identity over again. We are moving from one condition of existence to another. Just think about that. People often ask, what are we in spirit? If somebody dies at 90, do they look 90? If a child passes at 6, are they still 6 forever? And the truthful answer is the Bible doesn't tell us. But think about what age really is. Age belongs to the physical body. Our skin changes, our bones change, our organs change, our cells change. Time affects the physical body. In the spiritual body, it is no longer subject to physical deterioration. Then perhaps age doesn't work the same way there. We may still be recognizable. We may still have form. We may still appear in a way that allows another consciousness to recognize us. But perhaps biological age simply doesn't apply the same way. Excuse me. So when we did all this language about energy and frequency and vibration come from, where did it come from? A lot of it developed gradually over time. A lot of it did. There are teachers centuries ago who spoke about invisible forces and magnetism. Then different spiritual and metaphysical movements began talking about subtle bodies, etheric bodies, astral bodies, fluidic bodies, and different planes of existence. Later, especially through New Age spirituality, words like energy, frequency, vibration, higher vibration, raising your vibration, and energy fields became common language. And eventually those words became part of the mediumship too. So now we use them without always knowing where they came from. The same thing happens with the word frequency. We hear spirit is a higher frequency. You have to raise your vibration. The guide lowers their frequency. The medium raises theirs. But I think we should occasionally ask ourselves, do we actually know that? Or is that simply the language we inherited? Perhaps what we're really experiencing is a change in consciousness, a deepening of stillness, a blending, a change in awareness, a difference in presence. And then our human mind tries to put words around the experience. So we call it a frequency change. We call it vibration. We call it energy. But those words are interpretations of an experience. They may not necessarily explain what is truly happening. And I think this becomes especially important in trance. A medium goes into trance and suddenly we hear, you are all beings of energy. You must raise your vibration. You're entering a higher frequency. And again, maybe those words generally belong to the communicator. I'm not saying they don't, but I also think we have to remember something very important. The medium already knows those words. They've heard them, they've read them, they've used them, they've heard other mediums use them. And this is where mental overlay can sometimes enter. The presence of spirit may be completely genuine. The communication may be genuine, but the human mind may still use familiar language to explain what is being experienced. The medium may feel a communicator approach and say, another energy is coming in. But perhaps what actually happened was simply another presence became perceptible. And I think that distinction matters. Because if my mother comes to me from spirit, I don't believe my mother became as an anonymous energy. If your husband comes to a medium, it's not simply a vibration. If your child communicates with you, that child hasn't somehow lost an individuality and became a frequency. If evidential mediumship means anything, then individuality must continue. Otherwise, how could there be evidence? How could a communicator remember a particular house, a family member, a personality trait, a joke, a memory, a relationship? Evidence depends upon identity. So I believe we need to be careful not to reduce spirit down to something impersonal. And I'm not saying never use the word energy. Sometimes it's perfectly understandable. You may feel a change before you know who is there. You may say, I feel a different energy around me. That can simply mean the atmosphere has changed. But perhaps instead of always saying an energy is coming in, we could sometimes say, I feel another presence. I'm becoming aware of another communicator. I feel another conscious moving closer. There is a change around me. These words leave room for the individuality of spirit. Also, I want to say something about science. Sometimes people say science proves we are energy because energy never dies. That isn't quite accurate. Our physical bodies certainly use energy. The brain uses energy. Our cells use energy. Our bodies produce heat and electric activity. But the fact that physical energy changes form does not prove that personality or consciousness survives death. There are different questions. So I don't think we need to use physics to try to prove spiritual experience. Mediumship should stand upon the experience and the evidence of mediumship itself. We don't have to borrow scientific words to make spirit sound more believable. And this brings me back to something very simple. Maybe we are more than we understand. Maybe the spiritual body is something our physical brain simply cannot fully comprehend. Maybe it is form without a physical flesh. Maybe it is a consciousness expressed differently. Maybe it is something beyond our language we have, and perhaps that is okay. We don't need to pretend to know everything. We don't have to take everything mysterious and call it energy. Sometimes we can simply say, I don't completely understand what spirit is made of. But I know there is a difference between an impersonal force and a conscious presence. And when someone we love comes close, perhaps we should remember that. That presence has a history. That presence has love, has memory, individuality. So the next time you hear someone say an energy is coming in, maybe just think about it a little differently. Perhaps it isn't merely an energy. Perhaps it is someone. And to me, there is a big difference. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please subscribe to my channel, and like this video. And I hope and wish you a very happy day. And thank you.